Japan's prisons aren't what you think. They hide stories of suffering, secrecy, and injustice behind their walls. Most people imagine clean, orderly cells and strict rules, but behind Japan's prison gates lies a world of rigid silence, brutal routines, and shocking realities that outsiders rarely glimpse. And here's where it gets even stranger. Japan has over 100 correctional facilities, from high-security prisons to small detention centers, including specialized institutions for women and juveniles. Their approach isn't just punishment, it's a strict system designed to force conformity. Days start early, and every minute is scheduled: meals, work, exercise, even bathing. Guards patrol constantly, and silence is golden. Literally. Speaking out of turn or breaking rules isn't just frowned upon, it can spiral into severe disciplinary action. Rehabilitation is part of the philosophy, but it's wrapped tightly in discipline, obedience, and a culture that prizes order above all else. Just when it seemed orderly, reality hit harder. Cells are small, often shared by 2 or 3 inmates with barely enough room to stretch. Privacy, almost non-existent. Guards can peek in at any moment, and routine inspections strip away even the little comfort prisoners might carve out. Beds are simple, thin mats on the floor, and daily routines revolve around work assignments and limited recreation. Meals are basic, nutritionally adequate but unimaginative. And healthcare, while technically provided, is minimal and delayed for non-urgent issues. Hygiene is a constant struggle in crowded spaces, and the mental strain is intense. The silence, the surveillance, the lack of personal space, it wears down even the strongest mind. And this part blew my mind. Solitary confinement in Japan isn't just a short time out. Some prisoners spend weeks, even months, isolated in tiny cells with almost no human contact. Then there's forced labor, cleaning, cooking, maintenance, often 8 hours a day or more. Refuse and punishments escalate. Loss of privileges, extra work, even harsher confinement. It's not just physical, it's psychological. The constant pressure to obey, to stay silent, and to perform without complaint chips away at identity. Prisoners describe a sense of being erased, replaced by the system's rules. You start counting time not in days, but in moments of endurance, and even small mistakes can feel catastrophic. What would you do if every move were watched and judged? But wait, it's about to get way more shocking. On paper, inmates have rights, communication with family, access to lawyers, and medical care. In reality, these rights are often delayed or restricted. Phone calls are monitored, requests can take weeks, and seeing a lawyer can feel like navigating a maze of red tape. The bureaucracy runs deep, and transparency is scarce. Complaints can vanish into the system, leaving prisoners trapped in silence. Even health concerns might go unaddressed until they escalate. The system is technically fair, but daily life makes those rights almost theoretical. It's a constant struggle between what's promised and what's delivered. And just when it seems harsh, overcrowding worsens everything. Some facilities operate well over capacity, squeezing inmates into cramped spaces meant for far fewer people. The psychological toll is brutal. Anxiety, depression, and even trauma become daily companions. Stories of attempted suicides, fights breaking out over tiny grievances, and breakdowns in isolation are all too common. Space, or the lack of it, magnifies every frustration. Imagine living shoulder to shoulder with strangers. Every sound amplified, every small offense escalated, while rules and routines crush individuality. The human mind strains, And even the strongest prisoners can break under the weight of relentless pressure.
Il y en a deux qui me tiennent de chaque côté. J'ai aussi une corde autour de la taille.
And this part surprised me the most. Japan officially pushes rehabilitation, classes, vocational training, and therapy sessions. Some inmates pick up skills, earn certifications, and even rebuild their lives after release. But success isn't guaranteed. Access often depends on the crime. Minor offenders might get more opportunities, serious criminals less. Failures aren't rare. Inmates can complete programs, yet leave the system unprepared for the outside world. The gap between training and real-life application is huge. Even when programs exist, rigid schedules and prison pressures often crush motivation. You start wondering, are these programs truly about reform, or just giving the appearance of it? And here's where the system's cracks peek through. Escapes are rare, but when they happen, they shock the country. They reveal vulnerabilities, unmonitored areas, overstretched guards, and lapses in surveillance. Japan clamps down hard. Intense screenings, contraband checks, anti-riot measures, and constant surveillance. Guards patrol with military-like precision, but human error still creeps in. Compared to global standards, Japan's prisons are tight, almost sterile, yet the few breaches show no system is perfect. Even the strictest protocols can't eliminate risk. It's a reminder, control is never absolute, and the line between order and chaos is thinner than it seems. And this is where it gets murky. Journalists face strict restrictions when trying to report from prisons. Visits are monitored, interviews are limited, and cameras are rarely allowed. The official narrative is polished, projecting fairness and efficiency, but whistleblowers hint at hidden abuses, mistreatment, and neglect. Cultural stigma plays a role, too. A saving face is ingrained. Families often stay silent, and inmates hesitate to speak out, fearing retaliation or shame. The result? A system that looks spotless on paper, but hides troubling realities behind closed doors. Stories leak slowly, pieced together from legal filings, rare testimonies, and investigative journalism. What would it take for the full truth to emerge?
がもう連れて行かれて狭い部屋で窓もない何にもない部屋で前に刑事と横に刑事がいてそしてもうお前がやったんだろうってもうまるっきり犯人扱い
And finally, the cases that made headlines. Some famous incidents reveal the dark side of the system. Wrongful imprisonments, extreme mistreatment, and even deaths inside cells. Each story rattles the public, sparking outrage and calls for reform. But these aren't just isolated events. They expose systemic flaws, overcrowding, inadequate healthcare, bureaucratic hurdles, and strict obedience culture. Reforms are proposed, yet change is slow, tangled in layers of tradition and institutional pride. Even when the government reacts, the focus often skews toward optics rather than full accountability. The scandals remind everyone that behind Japan's reputation for order lies a shadow world of stress, control, and quiet suffering. And here's where the human cost hits hardest. Depression, anxiety, and PTSD, they're rampant behind bars. The relentless structure, isolation, and pressure to obey silently crush many inmates. Psychiatric support exists but is minimal, and stigma makes asking for help feel like weakness. Former prisoners speak of sleepless nights, panic attacks, and a sense of hopelessness that no therapy session could immediately fix. Some describe trying to hide struggles to avoid punishment or judgment. Suicide attempts and self-harm aren't unheard of. You start realizing that while the system focuses on obedience and labor, mental well-being is an afterthought. What would you do if trapped in a place like this, day after day?
一口で言えばもう拷問と等しいような手段もやれと言われたことありますよね。
And here's where the global spotlight comes in. Human rights organizations like Amnesty International and the UN have repeatedly raised concerns about Japan's prisons. Overcrowding, lack of mental health support, strict labor, and isolation practices. Compared to other developed nations, Japan scores high on order but low on transparency and inmate welfare. International reports push for reform, yet the response is often defensive. Officials downplay issues, emphasizing Japan's safety and efficiency. Some minor reforms occur, but critics argue they barely scratch the surface. The tension between domestic pride and external pressure paints a complicated picture. A system revered at home, but criticized abroad for what lies hidden behind the walls. And it all comes back to culture. Japanese values of shame, obedience, and conformity deeply influence prison life. Silence isn't just a rule. It's expected, ingrained, and socially enforced. The public often imagines order, discipline, and reform. But inside, inmates face rigid routines, psychological stress, and subtle social punishments. The gap between perception and reality is staggering, and it's culture itself that shapes both the prison system and the way the world views it.
The talks the check system like, do you hear that sound? Like people talking? No, you don't, because they're not talking.
It's time to demand transparency and reform. Japan's prisons don't just punish individuals, they reflect societal values, cultural priorities, and our collective responsibility. Recognizing these hidden struggles is about protecting human rights and shaping a society that values rehabilitation, dignity, and fairness for future generations. The voices behind these walls deserve to be heard. Japan's prison system is a hidden world of strict rules, suffering, and silence. Understanding it is not just about crime, it's about human rights, justice, and the future. Share this story, raise awareness, and demand change for the forgotten voices behind bars. Like, comment, and subscribe for more.